Hello everyone. Today I welcome you for this talk, which is the first in a series of women, or Muslim women fiction writers. I'd like to welcome Leila Aboulela. Leila Aboulela is a novelist, essayist, playwright who so far published 6 novels, and this is her 7th novella or novel, freshly published. And I will leave aside what I prepared and read something from here. Leila is an award-winning writer whose work has received praise from its exploration of identity, migration, and Islamic spirituality. Her most recent novel, River Spirit, was shortlisted for the HWA Gold Crown Award for Historical Fiction. Aboulela grew up in Sudan. In her mid-20s, she moved to Scotland, where she now lives. This is the short bio in her book, but apart from this, I would like to say something about my experience reading about Leila the last few weeks. To introduce her, it's really very good experience to be with somebody like her. She is a Sudanese, Egyptian, Scottish, British, living in Dubai, Doha, Jakarta, traveling the world, and digging archives for writing her novels, which more about multiculturalism, identity. I found a lot of things actually, and also she wrote about Sudan while the country was in transition, and it remains in transition unfortunately in the 60s and 70s. Leila's work is praised by Nobel laureates like Nkosi and Abdurrahman Gurna, who won the prize 2 years ago. Her work is also discussed in scholarship, in literary scholarship, in translation. One of our colleagues, Dr. Amr Al-Adwan, already did a research about her work, the translator, or Al-Mutarjima. We should stress Al-Mutarjima, not Al-Mutarjim. I mean the feminine translator, which is not clear in the English word. Leila was born to an Egyptian mother and Sudanese father, but she chose to speak and write in English because she wanted to avoid family issues, because people fight over languages. And it's interesting that she considers Egyptian Arabic and Sudanese Arabic as languages, and she chose to use English as escape from family mashakil, as it is. Mashakil, of course. I give the floor to Leila. Please welcome her with me.
Thank you very much. Very unusual introduction. Thank you very much. So I'll start straight away because I know everybody's very busy. And I'll say that back in the 1999, when my first novel was published, and it's the Translator, it was called, some of the Arabic readers, like my aunt, for example, was one of them. They were surprised to see Arabic words inside the text of the novel. And I had put these Arabic words in italics in the novel, but I didn't explain their meaning, and I didn't have a glossary at the back of the book. So they said, how are your English readers? This is an English novel, and it's published in the West. How are they going to understand the Arabic words? And I replied by saying that people know these words. These words are Ramadan, Hajj, Muazzin. They're kind of like common words, and so there is no need for me to explain them. And eventually, these words entered the English dictionary, and after they entered the English dictionary, I stopped even putting them in italics. I used to put them in italics, and I even stopped this habit of putting them in italics, because once they've entered the English dictionary, they are English words. And so khalas, we don't need to have to explain them to any readers. So when I first started to write and started to publish, I was very I felt that I was not alone. I felt that I was part of a global movement, and that this movement included writers from Africa, from Asia, and from other parts of the world for whom English was not the first language. English was not their mother tongue. And globalization and the internationalization of the English language made people cultural travelers and made people, interested in reading about reading in English about characters who were not English. And the growing success of post-colonial writers ran in parallel to my development as a writer. And in the early 1990s, I was reading Abdulrazak Gurnar, who was from Zanzibar. I was reading Ben Okri from Nigeria, Ahdaf Suwaif from Egypt. And none of these writers were English, but they were writing in English. And one of the writers that we spoke about at the time and we were very aware of was Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who is from Kenya. And he wrote a book called Decolonizing the Mind. And Ngugi started his career writing in English, but then he left English and he went back to his original mother tongue. And he was against the idea that people like us should write in English, and he said that the bullet was the means of physical subjugation, but language is the means of spiritual subjugation. He pointed out that English and other European languages, French, Dutch, Portuguese, became the official languages of education and communication in Africa, and since then the indigenous languages have been amputated. He says there's something very wrong in saying to a human being, let me cut off your legs and I will give you artificial ones, which will be perfect. I'm saying let us walk on our own 2 feet. So Ngugi questioned the gulf between African intellectuals and their audience and resolved to write in his own tongue, Gikuki. Gikuki is an African language which is threatened, but Arabic is a strong, striving language. And it's very far from being threatened. And so for this reason, among others, I don't share Ngugi's position, and nor do the ever-growing number of Arab, Asian, and African writers who either choose to write in English or have no choice but to write in English because of education and immigration. Another writer that took a position that was different from Ngugi wa Thiong'o was Chinua Achebe. And he said that the English language will be able to carry the weight of my African experience, but it will have to be a new English, still in full communion with its ancestral home, but altered to suit its new African surrounding. So Chinua Achebe then was speaking about a new English, not the old English, and he was saying that instead of refusing to write in English, we can, people like myself, we can enter English and we can change it. We can change actually the English language. And I started to write when I moved to Scotland after I left Sudan in the late 1980s. And the reason I started to write, I was a statistics graduate. I had graduated from economics and statistics, but but I felt homesick, for Sudan, and I was also very anxious about my children growing up in a Western culture. And I felt that I couldn't share these anxieties because when I met other Sudanese and other Arab immigrants, they didn't want to talk about these issues. They wanted to, in gatherings, they wanted to pretend that they were not in the UK, and they wanted to relive the kind of the cultural and social norms that they were used to. A lot of them said we are going back. A lot of them felt that they were going back. So introducing a subject such as how are we going to bring up our children in the West was never met with welcome. So I took this anxiety and I poured it into the fiction, and I found that fiction was a place to kind of absorb the anxieties of the person who is away from home. One of the quotes that I read at the time was from the Croatian writer Dubravka Gresic, and she left her country. She came from when Yugoslavia. She was Croatian, but when Yugoslavia, when it broke up, she left her country. And she says that the writer, she has an essay called "The Writer in Exile," and she says the writer tries to rationalize his personal nightmare in writing, to calm his exile's fears in writing, to put his broken life into some sort of shape through writing, to order the chaos he has landed in through exile, to fix the insights he has come to in writing, to dilute his own bitterness in writing. An exile's writing are often nervous, subversive, and nostalgic. This is because exile itself is a neurosis, a restless process of testing values and comparing worlds, the one we left and the one we ended up. So in my case, I was comparing Khartoum, where I grew up and where I graduated from university, to the city of Aberdeen, where I was living. And Aberdeen is in the northeast of Scotland. And of course, it's a very different environment. It's a very, very different climate. It's dark most of the time. And so I was very aware of these differences. And I was also very aware was also from moving from a Muslim society, a place where people took Islam for granted, into a non-Muslim society, which was Christian, but in a way it was not Christian. It was very secular. So I was aware of all this, and also at the time in the 90s and then coming up to the 2000s, we entered the age of Islamophobia, 9/11, the war on terror. So there was also a sense of being very defensive, feeling defensive. You were always hearing, of course, that Islam is violent, and you're always hearing that Islam oppresses women and so on. And there was always a feeling that, I wanted to kind of write back about this. And so I started to write, and these are the books that I wrote. This is the first novel, The Translator, and then the short stories, and then Minaret, the novel. This is a nice detail in the bottom of the colored lights. This is the bridge in Sudan, one of the bridges in Khartoum. Then this is more recent novels, The Kindness of Enemies, in which I wrote about the 19th century Russia and Imam Shamil and the jihad he was fighting. And then this is Lyrics Alley, where I wrote about the 1950s in Sudan. And this is the recent one, River Spirit, where I wrote about the time of the Mahdist wars in Sudan. And then this is some of also the recent one, the New Year, which is aimed at beginner readers, Bird Summons, and what was this one? The Stories Elsewhere Home. Yeah. So I wanted to talk today about translation, and I wanted to give the example of translation not being always a linguistic case. This is the classic novel called Jane Eyre, and this is the film, the Arabic film, the Egyptian film that was based on the novel of Jane Eyre. And in the Egyptian cinema in the 1960s adapted a lot of these world classics. They did Crime and Punishment, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Lady of the Camellias. And when they came to adapt Jane Eyre, all their adaptations, they had Egyptian characters, they had an Egyptian setting, they had an Egyptian context to the whole thing. And you know, maybe you know, do you know Jane Eyre? Has anybody read Jane Eyre, the classic? Yeah. Hands up. Okay. So you'll know that the conflict in Jane Eyre is a love story, among other things, Yani. And it's the obstacle, always in the love story there's an obstacle. So the obstacle in the case of Jane Eyre is that Jane cannot marry Mr. Rochester because he proposes marriage, and then they go to the church. It's very dramatic. He goes to the church, they go to the church, she's wearing the wedding dress, and then somebody comes and says, this marriage can't take place. Why? Because Rochester is already married. So big drama. And he's already married to a woman who is very seriously mentally ill, and she's locked up in the attic of his house. And he keeps this a secret, and of course he can't divorce her, and of course it's against the law to have a second wife, and so he cannot marry Jane, and Jane is a very religious Christian woman, so she refuses to live with him as his mistress, and so she runs away. So I love this story very, very much, and then when I came to write my novel, The Translator, I was very influenced by it. But let's go back to the film. So when the film tried to make the setting in Egypt and to have all the Egyptian characters, so of course it faced a problem, because how can they stop the man representing Rochester from marrying the girl, Jane? Her name was Busaina and he was Murad Bey, and she was Busaina. So how can they stop this? Because obviously, khalas, Egypt is there's Sharia law, and he can marry Busaina. Of course, he can take a second wife. So they came up with a big problem. And he can't divorce her because part of the divorce agreement was that he'd lose his land. And then on top of that, they came up with a very, very quite creative solution to their problem, is that they had Busaina discovering that she's the sister of the woman in the attic, the mad woman in the attic. And so, of course, under the Sharia law, Murad Bey cannot marry Busaina and the first wife at the same time, and he can't divorce the first wife, otherwise he'll lose all his money. And so the film then did all this. So it's very interesting how they translated the objection. And critics in the West, when they talk about Jane Eyre, they talk about how the first wife, who was called Bertha, and she's called Bertha in the novel, she comes from Creole ancestry. So she comes from one of these islands of Martinique, and so they show how Charlotte Bronte thinks of her as the other, thinks of her as being somewhat, she has Negro blood, and that's why she's kind of inclined to have this mental health issues. But of course, the Egyptian, so Charlotte Bronte and the British could never have Jane and Bertha being sisters, because there was a big distance between them. But the Egyptians didn't have a problem with having the two women being sisters. They didn't. This was a kind of a detail that got lost in translation. So the makers of the film also could have solved their problem by having. Using an Egyptian Christian family to have this story, but it didn't work out. So I thought I was better than the Egyptian filmmakers, and when I came to do my novel, The Translator, I decided to go for a very Muslim obstacle. And so the very Muslim obstacle was that. My heroine would be in the West, and she would want to marry a man who's not a Muslim. So that is the obstacle. Then she cannot marry him until he becomes a Muslim. And so the novel, when you're reading the novel, The Translator, if you haven't read it, you're always thinking, is he going to be a Muslim or not? Is he going to be a Muslim or not? Because that then solves the conflict in the story. This is the impediment in the story. So in the novel, let me move a bit to the translator. Yeah, this is the translator, and this is the translator translated in some of the different languages. The Spanish is the one with the funny cover, and this is the German one, and this is some other also translations. This is the Korean one, so I was very excited about the Korean, having the Korean cover for the translator. So when Samar describes her work as a translator, she says that she's molding Arabic into English, trying to be transparent like a pane of glass, not obscuring the meaning of any words. And this idea of translation as a molding, as something soft, as something gentle, is about seeing the process of translation as a transparent thing, like glass, like you're passing the meaning from one language to the other, almost without the interference of anyone. However, there are times in the novel where the process of translation is not so smooth, and she, for example, talks about transforming the Arabic rhetoric into English and how more of an effort is required of her. And she sometimes feels that she's pushing Arabic into English, or English into Arabic. And there are times when she can't remember the meaning of a word. She's struggling to find, for example, habbahan in a shop, and she can't find it because she can't remember what is habbahan in English. And also her name, Samar, there's a part where she talks about it with this man that she meets, and he says to her, do you pronounce it like the season summer? And then she says yes, but it has a different meaning, and she talks about the meaning of the word summer in Arabic. So the translator was about this this challenge of how does this young woman in the West, and this is something that I felt that older generations of Arab writers, they wrote about young men in the West. Like Taha Hussein, for example, actually was studying in the West, and he married a French woman. Lots of young Arab men went to the West, and they married English ladies or French ladies. But there wasn't the situation of the young, single Muslim woman being in the West and facing this challenge. And when I wrote the novel, again, it was something new. But over the years, I've seen so many times it's happened in members of my family, and so many people who this situation happened to. And so the novel then became a translation of faith in a way. So that how is she, this woman, how is she put in this situation where she has to translate her faith to a non-Muslim person. One of my other novels, which is, I think maybe I need to go back. With this one, the Lyrics Alley became Harat al-Maghna. Oops, sorry, gone the wrong way. Lyrics Alley. So in Lyrics Alley, this is the novel which involved a lot of translation on my part, because it was a novel that was set in Sudan and Egypt, and the characters were speaking in Arabic all the time. So in the translator, of course, it's set in the West. This woman is in the West the conversations were happening in English. But with Lyrics Alley, the conversations were happening in Arabic, and I was translating then all the way through. The process of writing was also a process of translation. And I also was, the novel was inspired by the life of my father's cousin. He was a poet called Hassan Awad Aboulela, and I had his poetry with me. And so I also translated this poetry from the original Arabic and colloquial Sudanese into English. And so the dialogue was in Arabic, and the thoughts of the characters were in Arabic, and I was translating it into English. And there were times when I had sort of someone saying, for example, here are some examples. She is nothing next to you at all. Your fingernail is more valuable than the whole of her. Or someone saying, I'm a heavy guest cousin. I should consider this farming job so I can relieve you. You don't know who I am, you sons of dogs. One telephone call and I'll be out of here. And so this kind of talk, which is a literal translation, I noticed that I only did it with the minor characters. I never did it with the main characters. When the main characters are speaking, they are speaking like English proper. But these little these little things, examples are especially for the Arabic reader who's reading the English and then hearing, hopefully, what I'm hoping to do is create a sense of that you're reading the English and then you're translating it yourself in your mind, and so you're hearing these kind of idiomatic way of speaking. Okay. I'm also going to talk now about the experience of my novels being translated into Arabic. So all of them got translated into Arabic. Every single book, except maybe the new one. This is some of the translations, and this is the new one, River Spirit, and this one is Bird Summons. So the title has also been changed. So I work with the Arabic translator very closely when they translate. My translator is Professor Badruddin Al-Hashimi. He's translated most of my work. And I read over the translation, the Arabic translation, and I'm kind of very involved in the process. So some of the things I noticed in this experience of all these works being translated is the challenges, or let's say the challenges then of translating English into Arabic, or a novel written in English into Arabic. So the first challenge would be that there are some words that are difficult to translate into Arabic. One of them is the word quirky. So the sentence said, too often I had watched quirky and brilliant students crash and burn. And then the translation that was offered by the translator was طلبة أذكياء وغريبي الأطوار. So this was for quirky. Brilliant was أذكياء, and then quirky was غريب الأطوار. So I didn't feel that this, for me, this didn't really translate the word quirky. At the same time, I myself couldn't think of any other word to use. So this then is a big problem, because then how do you do that? How do you translate a word that doesn't? I'm not sure that has a real accurate word for word translation. Another situation is when there is some misunderstanding. Like, for example, I'm writing about a character who is very obese. He's big, and so one person is talking about the other character who she discovers. She hasn't seen him for many years, and so she's very surprised that he's put on a lot of work. So she says, soon I discovered that after eating the healthy dinner Grusha cooked, Grusha is his mother, he would order takeaway and keep eating late into the night. He drank Pepsi instead of water. No wonder. Okay, so the problem here is the word no wonder. Because then in Arabic, it became يقوم بطلب طعام take away. Okay, يزدرده طوال الليل مع مشروب البيبسي لا عجب في ذلك. So لا عجب في ذلك sounded to me like there is nothing strange in him drinking Pepsi instead of water. Whereas when in English, it was meant to be no wonder he put on weight because he's drinking the Pepsi instead of the water. So that was for me a big challenge. I didn't know how to deal with that. Another situation is when the translation results in an unnecessary explanation to the Arabic reader. Suddenly there's an excess of words that is not needed, and this happens quite often, and here's one example. So this happens because I am in a way trying to explain to the English reader something that they don't know. So the sentence is, the wide open air hosh was lined with beds, little stools and tables. It was a massive kitchen, sitting room and bedroom in which women, servants and children cooked, slept, ate and socialized. Okay, so when it became translated into Arabic, it was كانت توجد في حوش البيت الكبير عددا من الأسرة المفروشة والطاولات and etc. etc. And it didn't need to be, there wasn't need for all of this, because in the Arabic, when you say hosh, there is some understanding to the Arabic reader. They understand that it is open air, they understand all of this. So suddenly, I didn't need all of these words. So it was like, take out, take out, take out. We don't need all this because it's an unnecessary explanation for the Arab reader. Another thing that I noticed also was that because remember I said that I am hearing the people talking, or I am translating as I'm writing. So I have translated a word from Arabic, I have put it into English, and now when the book is translated into Arabic, I wanted to go back to the original Arabic, okay? But it hasn't gone back to the original Arabic. This, for example, happened to me in an example from Lyrics Ali also. This is the text in English. It says, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, when Allah loves a people, he tries them. So the translation then came, the first draft of the translation came, يقول الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله إذا أحب عبدا امتحنه. So this is not the original wording of the hadith, because the original wording of the hadith that I had in mind and that I translated is that إذا أحب الله عبدا ابتلاه. But in the process of translating, and when people translate, they keep translating. Yeah, and I think some of you are translating students. I think it's very important if you are coming across something which is originally in Arabic, that it needs to go back to this original, especially something like hadith, for example. We can't have it being translated into English and then it goes back to being translated into Arabic, and then it becomes something else and not the original word the original wording that it was. And then I had a similar experience in the kindness of enemies, which is where is that? عندي 5 دقايق خلاص أنا قربت خلاص. Oh, sorry. It should be here. Yeah, sorry, it's this one, the one about Imam Shamil. So I'm talking about Imam Shamil in this novel, and I'm saying that the crescent to herald the new moon, a sacred one had not appeared. Okay, and in the first draft of the Arabic translation, the word sacred month was translated as Shahr Muqaddas, and that's not what I wanted. I had in mind al-Ashhur al-Hurum, because this is so in a way you saying Shahr Muqaddas and translating sacred the translation for sacred is muqaddas, but if you translate it, you lose the meaning of Ashhur al-Hurum, where they were not fighting jihad. And this is what I wanted to add this understanding. And then the last example is when the characters are speaking in Arabic and I'm hearing them in Arabic as a kind of colloquial Sudanese. So one of the conversation was she turned to look at Fatma and said, Fatma's wearing glasses for the first time, and it's the 1950s and the girls were not supposed to wear glasses. So she says, how do I look? Ugly, said her sister, plain ugly. And so the translation was qabiha بالتأكيد, but I wanted it to be shena because this is the Sudanese colloquial is shena, and I was sure that she had said shena, and so we changed it to shena. So
she can be beautiful, but shena.
She can be beautiful shena in the glasses, yes. So thank you very much. Yeah, that's me. Yeah.